everyone, welcome back to the podcast. This is Mo, your host, and for those that are joining us for the first time, thank you for joining. We hope you love it here and you consider listening to our other episodes. Today's episode is going to be heavy, so if you have had any experience with sexual abuse, gender-based violence, and all of that nasty stuff, I recommend that you probably want to skip this over because we'll be touching on that subject today heavily. And for those with kids, probably it's not a good episode to have them listen to. So prioritize your mental health and your sanity, and hopefully we'll catch you on another episode of the Monsible podcast. So today we're talking about just India. And I should just start by saying, as a Nigerian, growing up in the 80s, Indian entertainment was a staple in my everyday life. I grew up watching iconic Indian movies like Dusty Numberi, Najina the Snake Girl, and Amitabh Bachchan. I had the longest crush on him. It was like our beloved nation's, grandpa. And later in life, while attending grad school, I made a new friend from India who was from Rajasthan. Shout out to Pujay. And we realized that many of the snacks we enjoyed together were also popular in India, a shared heritage from our history under British colonization. And then 13 years ago, when T-Dog, my husband, and I got married, we even ditched, my traditional wedding gown and his tux for colorful kurtas during our evening reception. Because, I was so much into Indian culture and just how very expressive it was. And even through the movies, their love for family, the good guy always winning, and of course the music, right? And India was also a gateway to Asia for me, and the place that eventually led me to exploring Korea, which I'm a Koreanophile, right? Speaking the language and all that. So India really, really holds a special place in my heart. I have never visited, yet to visit. It's on my visit list. That's why it's especially heartbreaking to see the recent news of the rape and murder of a doctor in Kolkata. The brutal incident has shocked the nation and the world, shining once again a harsh light on the persistent issue of sexual violence in India. Sadly, this is not an isolated case. There are so many stats that reveal that in India, a woman is raped every 20 minutes. So by the time we finish recording this episode, 3 women will have been raped, with another incident likely just around the corner. It's an overwhelming reality in a country of over 1.4 billion people, where sometimes these heinous acts often go unreported or unpunished. Today, our guest is Anjali Chakkissary. She's an international student from India. She has lived in the US for the past 5 years. She's pursuing a biomedical science degree, and she's driven by a passion for advancing healthcare and improving lives through scientific research. Her journey from India to the US has not only shaped her academic pursuits, but has also deepened her commitment to intercultural competency and student advocacy. She's an advocate for diversity and inclusion, so she supports students from diverse backgrounds and creates an environment where everyone feels valued and respected. Her experiences as an international student has given her unique insights into the challenges and opportunities of navigating different cultures. She's also particularly passionate about addressing issues of gender inequality and advocating for the safety and empowerment of women, both in her home country of India and globally. With a strong belief in the power of education and community, she's actively involved in initiatives that promote understanding and collaboration among people from various cultural backgrounds. Her work and advocacy reflects her commitment to building a more inclusive and equitable world where every individual has the opportunity to thrive. Now, while Anjali is here to share her personal experiences, I want to emphasize that she is not speaking on behalf of all Indians or the entire country. Her views are her own, and that has been shaped by her unique journey and experiences. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Anjali to the podcast. Hello.
Hi, Mom.
Good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me on here.
Of course. And shout out to Donna, who I met Anjali through. I met Anjali 5 years ago when she just came to the US. And Anjali is also one of Ari's aunties. And she's also Ari a lot. And so thank you so much. So for those that don't know, Ari is my daughter. So Anjali, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey from India to the US? What inspired you to pursue biomedical sciences?
Yeah, my journey from India to US, wow, to think back in time, it's been almost half a decade that I've been here. It feels weird to say that, but at the time, I was just a 17-year-old teenager, fresh out of high school. Growing up, I always loved reading books, especially that's something that had a meaning to it in the actual real world and life. And I was always fascinated by the power of science to change lives. I firsthand witnessed the healthcare challenges that many people in India face. As you know, India is leading the charts in cholesterol and diabetes, and due to quote unquote the Indian lifestyle. But this sparked a deep desire in me to contribute to solutions that can improve healthcare, and which in turn led me to pursue biomedical sciences. But moving to US, I feel like it was kind of an opportunity to have access to world-class education and research. Not saying that India didn't have that, but again, US gave me much more access than just education. It was a really transformative journey for me personally as well. But yeah.
Oh, great. Can you tell us a little bit about your family structure? Like how many kids, what's your position in your family, and what part of India did you grow up in? I
grew up in this part called Gujarat, which is, for people who don't know India much, it is the state right next to wherever Mumbai is. It touches borders. Ethnically, I am Malayali, which is from South India. But I grew up in Gujarat, and I've lived there my whole life. I was born and raised there. My family, we have a little small family. My mom, my dad, and a sister who is younger to me by 2 years. But yeah.
Nice. So you've been in the US for 5 years, and whenever you mention, I'm like, wow, has it been 5 years since I've known you? Because it's been like yesterday, you know? Yeah. How would you say your experience has been as an international student, especially some of the biggest challenges and rewards you've experienced?
I mean, every international student's journey is unique, and I'm pretty sure you relate. You've been an international student yourself. Yeah. But I genuinely feel that my journey has been quite enriching and transformative. Well, initially when I came here, of course, I was trying to adjust to new cultures, challenges, and navigating the whole different education system. But as soon as I tried to fit in a little bit, I'm a COVID international student, so COVID hit, and there was this whole new system of trying to figure out Zoom and stuff, and also dealing with the other parts that COVID had, like loneliness with as an international student, not being able to go back home, see people even while living in the US. But all of this had given me the biggest reward of all, which is making me emotionally stronger and trying to figure out life myself. You know how they say, like, it was like me, the mama bird throwing the baby bird out of the it had no option but to survive.
Yeah. That's like the reality of every international student. You grow up by force, you know. You go through the fire.
We rise.
Yeah. Now, India, for me, is like an enigma, right? There's so much advancement, but in your rural areas, not like there's anything wrong with that, but it's so very complex to really wrap your mind around it. Plus, you have so many people. I mean, the last time I checked, it was about 1.4 million people. And it's super heterogeneous, you know. But so it's a country with such, you know, rich history, culture, and diversity. So for you, what do you think you miss the most about your home country? You know, maybe like some festivals or traditions or cuisine.
Yeah, definitely. As I said before, I'm quite similar to what somebody would call like a third culture child.
Yeah.
My ethnicity, heritage, all is South Indian. I grew up in West India. I went to an English medium school. But I speak a totally different language, and it was a whole thing, a lot of things going on. But that is the beauty of India, to be honest. Like, you know, people who move to places, who stay at places, it's just so diverse and cultural. But most of all, something that I personally miss while being here in the US is the sense of community and family.
Tell me about that.
No, genuinely, like, the only thing that I miss, like, of course there's food and stuff, but America is very like single family individualistic approach. As I just remember my days whenever I just came back from India back in February, and the only thing that I miss is like, oh, having a meal together with family. You would even consider your neighbors, your house help, even the people who watch your cars, your family.
Yeah.
They are invited to your wedding.
Yes, your duties and your yes, everybody. Yes. Yeah.
So that's the only like sense of like community, and it's kind of like heartwarming, and like you feel secure in that environment. That's the only thing that I feel like I miss the most.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend who came on the podcast and he made me realize some things. So I'm sure India is probably similar to Nigeria. Like in Nigeria, the moment you leave your house, you're having conversations with people, even if you don't feel like talking. Everyone is talking to you. And don't get me wrong, as an extrovert, I'm able to handle it. But I imagine it's so overwhelming for an introvert. Like you just want to have a quiet day. But then when you come to the US, you don't realize how much those micro conversations really impact your mental health. Because I just drive into my garage. I don't even see my neighbors half of the year, you know.
Exactly.
Everybody keeping to themselves is like, oh my goodness, this is quite depressing.
It's absolutely like the current house I live in. I don't even know what the neighbors, their names or anything. I just know they're this number house.
It's so quiet. You don't even hear kids playing on the streets, you know, people honking their cars, a goat bleating, a chicken, you know, a cockroach cackling in the background. Like, I miss those noises, the cacophony of it. I miss it.
The honking.
I know, bring it back. The one in honk, not the, you know, grab an iron bar from your car and go kill the person driving in front of you, kind of, you know, honk. All right.
So true.
So for those who might be wanting to explore your country for the first time, could you tell them about your favorite places in India? And I know it's so huge, you know, but just the places you love so far,
Yeah, but I know anybody who would look at India first would look at Taj Mahal, Bombay.
Goa for the longest time was my favorite place. My friend was like, Goa, don't do that.
But trust me, as a Malayali, being from Kerala, I can confidently say that Kerala, which is also FIF for nobody who knows, Kerala is known as God's own country in India, and it lives up to its name. The landscapes, the natural beauty, even the air in Kerala is different, to be honest. But one of the highlights I would say while visiting Kerala is the houseboats. The houseboats while cruising through the backwaters in Kerala is so, it's I cannot even explain it, and also having a good South Indian Kerala meal. I would say you would forget butter chicken and garlic naan. But I would really say explore South India, because that's a whole different scene.
Okay. And for those who might be, because I know a little bit about Kerala, because a lot of my friends are from there. It actually holds significant importance in Christianity, right? Like St. Thomas the Apostle, he was one of Jesus' apostles here, right, in Kerala. Syrian Christian tradition, education and social reform. They also have a lot of pilgrimage sites here.
Is something where Christianity actually began, because with the Portuguese invasion, they brought Christianity to India.
Okay. All right. Let's now move to the somber part of it. Now, Anjali, from your perspective, why do you think women in India have been subject to vicious attacks? And don't get me wrong, I feel like these issues will happen anywhere, right? It's a human condition. It's not just restricted to India. That said, there's a sentiment, which I might be wrong, in the sense that there are many protective factors, often to the advantage of the perpetrators, either through the judicial system or people so afraid to report because of repercussion on them, right? To them, sorry. So why do you think there's so many attacks against women? Do you think it has any connection to the caste system, or are there any other factors at play? And by the way, I want to just say shout out to my listeners who sent in a lot of these questions. I didn't come up with a lot of these questions, so shout out to all of our listeners who came up with this question.
That is definitely a great question. Personally, I feel like from what I've seen growing up in India and subconsciously just as a woman as an Indian woman, it's not a caste issue as per my perspective. I often feel it's the patriarchal attitude that we have in India, and more so the issues that lie within our law enforcement and legal system. I feel because these patriarchal attitudes often think of women as subordinate and can be controlled in a way. Like India it has changed in the past decade, but it is still a very male-dominated society, and women are often in parts of India still struggling to just have access to the basic equality, equal roles. I often think that it is the notion that women can be controlled, and also the stigma and the taboo that exists in India. Abstinence is something that is often imposed as a strict norm, not as like a personal choice like it is in America, which creates like further challenges for women who are sexually harmed. I feel kind of this stigma leads to severe repercussions, like I don't want to say issues with marriage perspectives, but that's a major reason. So, like damage to a woman's social image.
Capital, your marriageability as it were.
Not only women's social image, but the whole family name. There's a lot of that issue that sticks with it. But
and it's similar in Nigeria. So I won't lie to you, right? If almost like they call you, damaged goods, if you've been sexually abused, although things have changed, since growing up, but it's still a strong sentiment. So issues like, if you've been sexually abused or there's a mental illness in the family, you're almost like your marriageability kind of goes down and all. So So again, all these issues we're talking about are not quite germane to India, right? Like I said, it's a human condition, and where you have just pride of the heart and where people look at other people as less than, these issues will pop up. So for those that are listening, even though we're talking about India, we're not saying these issues are only restricted to India. What is just bringing India to the forefront is the current case with the Kolkata doctor, which we'll get to in a bit. Now, like I mentioned when I did the intro to this episode, growing up watching Indian movies, for me, and I know a lot of movies, they always put out, even watching Korean movies, I always say, my friends always remind me, this is not how the men are in Korea, okay? They're not always this romantic, popping up an umbrella for you when it's raining or, catching you when you fall. So, but then there was always this sentiment of women were seen as, tender, delicate, protecting them, women and children, right? And I've seen now even some of my male friends who are Indian. So there's an interesting dichotomy here where on one hand, many men in South Asian cultures seem to hold deep respect for women. Yet, there are some troubling incidents of sexual assault and indecent exposure, even in this diaspora. What do you think drives this contradictory behavior? And for you, as an Asian woman, what's your perspective? What's the reality from your perspective on that?
There is on one hand many men in India or South Asian cultures that we have been taught to show respect towards women, particularly like women is goddess. We have like a whole festival where women tie a rakhi to their brothers, which means a symbol of protecting your sisters, protecting women in general. But personally, from my perspective, I kind of feel like this only particularly applies within their own families. However, this respect doesn't often extend to women that are outside their immediate family or maybe strangers, I feel like. Of course, there are exceptions, but additionally, there is a strong expectation for women to adhere to the standards of modesty in a way, not be too modern. I don't know if that's a good way to say that.
I know what you mean. Like, don't like Nigerian men don't like feminist women. I know what you mean. Yeah. And it's the same thing even in Korea. There's a 4B movement in Korea right now.
Traditional men, even though there is a respect for them, but I feel like even as a woman, you may feel safe within your brothers, within your brothers or male relatives, but not feel safe if there's a male stranger. It's the same.
Yeah.
I feel like this reality, it is the reality. Well, respect is mostly within families, whereas you won't show that same respect to a stranger.
Stranger. Yeah. Now, are the grooming processes different? And here's what I ask. So I want to know how so like in Japan, for example, when they start schooling, boys are separated from girls, right? Because there's I think there's a podcast I listened to about the declining birth rate in Japan. So by the time they meet in college, they don't even really interact through school. So, for example, the men are so shy. Some of them don't even know how to have a conversation, with women. Is that the same way with India? I mean, how are the men, and are you allowed to like mix together in school, or don't touch boys, don't talk to boys, look away, or what exactly? Are there like difference like in the grooming process from a child from a young age? Yeah.
Yeah, I personally went to an all-girls school, but I would go to these tuition or coaching classes, which was co-ed. And to be honest, it is like a no-no. Like, girls and boys don't sit together in a bench. Period. Girls are on this side, boys are on the whole different side, like even growing up. And then, of course, you have friends, you have guy friends, you have girlfriends. But even dating, I feel like wherever I grew up in my community, it was always like hush hush. You don't tell anybody you are dating this person. You won't even tell your
parents.
What if somebody knows? Date in secret, People do that, but it's just not out in open, Or it's maybe just where I grew up.
And I've even heard about the moral police. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Am I saying it right?
Oh, yes, the moral police, the famous. So there is this. I'm not sure how much it is in India, but just where I grew up in North India, there were groups of people who were just committed to seeing breaking couples apart. Like if there's like a man and a woman, they're sitting together in a park, trying to have just a good time, no hurting nobody, they would just go up to them and be like, you cannot do this here.
Oh God.
It just affects children and everything. I don't know what logic or what stigma they had behind that, but I cannot comprehend my mind around that one.
I mean, again, I think we've talked about, and thanks for responding to that. We've talked about just the dynamics at play as far as how women are raised separately from boys and how you don't even get to interact. And of course, that emphasis on, chastity, not just your own, but whatever you do reflects on us. And I think so when you were talking initially about things you miss about your country, the community, that's a good thing. The darker side of that is the collectivist mindset where somebody's unique individualness is seen as representative of the group. So that way you can't even pursue your own individual happiness as it were. You always have to think about the collective. So it's not like it's not good or bad, but it can have its good side and bad side. So the other side of that community is everybody trying to be perfect and, chaste and, so much pressure to just be the best and, represent your family line and your whole village in the good light, which can be quite, stressful sometimes. So that is true. Yeah. And there are many cases that, have gained, and I know there's so many issues, good things and bad things happening. But I think the two cases that, have brought this issue to limelight, I think maybe it was about 12 years ago, the woman in 2012, in New Delhi, who was, raped in the bus and she eventually died. Yes. And this one is quite, and the reason why this is also more pervasive is it happened at work. So I think it was last month, or was it this month?
It was this month, August 8th.
August 8th, yeah. And your Independence Day was August 15th. I remember that because the same Independence Day as Korean. So in August 8th of 2024, this year, just weeks ago, Kolkata was rocked by a tragic incident of a young resident doctor in her second year. She was not only raped but murdered within the premises of her medical college and hospital called Algikar. And it took place in an area expected to be a sanctuary of healing and safety, which is also adding to the horror and the outrage felt across the nation. And this brutal assault and of course subsequent murder have reignited urgent discussions about the safety of women in India, particularly in places that should be secure. And I heard that she was not only was she the only child of her parents, that her parents crimped and saved to send her to medical school, which can be highly competitive in India, by the way. They even got her a car because they didn't want her hopping on, public buses whenever she's on call. She was on a 36-hour shift. And So my question to you with this, and I think the response from the authorities, especially the police, who, from what I've been reading, a lot of the public don't have a lot of hope in. They've tried to, first of all, I heard that they called the parents and said she committed suicide.
Suicide,
And
yeah.
it's like, how do you commit suicide with this amount of sperm inside of you? Your pelvic
Exactly.
bones being shattered, your skull being fragmented. Like, no, like, there's no way you want to kill yourself, in that kind of fashion. And then also because of just where it happened in her workspace, right? During just she took a break to go back to work, and it doesn't make sense as that was suicide, because how would you want to kill yourself in that kind of violence when anyways. So that said, like, what policies do you think the Indian government has put in place to prevent violence against women? And from just what I've watched so far and, gleaned from just doing research before I brought you on the podcast. So take, for example, there's this documentary that came out 3 years ago, To Kill a Tiger. It was produced by Mindy Kaling and I think Dev Patel. It seems that there's no severe penalties for cases like that, So in your view, are these laws effectively enforced? Why is it that it seems like the government don't really severely persecute and, mete out heavy punishments on rapists?
Yeah, so as you said before, the Nirbhaya case in 2012, where a bus incident took place, following that, India actually did impose a policy which is also known as the Nirbhaya Act, where to prevent violence against women. And although there are many policies in place, this one is specifically known in response to that brutal gang rape that was that happened in 2012. It gives a harsher penalty, harsher sentences for rapists or criminals of sexual violence, which include either the life imprisonment, up to 20 years in jail, or even death penalty. And something similar to that happened in this case as well. I'm not sure if you've heard or not, but there was a guy who was who left his Bluetooth in the room where the incident took place.
Connected to help. Yeah.
There have been news that he has been sentenced with death penalty as well, but people are now leaning more towards it. How could this be so simple, and how can one person do such horrible?
I think there's more people, and if they kill him quickly, he knows more than he's probably letting on, right?
That is true, but there has not been, so I cannot say
anything.
With certainty. But again, there are certain acts. But again, all these acts, everything can be in place, but we just need to ensure timely justice. And there are still, even with these acts in place, there are still issues in our legal systems with corruption, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Corruption and black money involved, that students like the students or women in these cases are not getting the justice they need, and criminals are just walking free as if nothing happened. So I feel like even with policies and everything in place, it's the legal system and honestly corruption that needs to be eliminated for these to work.
I mean, it's really heartbreaking. It's really, really heartbreaking. Not that anywhere rape happening is, okay, but at your workplace,
literally, yeah,
given just the stressfulness of it. And so questions about what was she wearing? She was wearing a medical coat. Like, what was she doing there? She was at work,
Literally.
I know. And so for my country, Nigeria, a lot of the issues we have sometimes are bordered by religiosity, right? So the church, the mosque, as it were, they play a lot of role in, for example, rather than suing somebody to court, you maybe go take them to your pastor and they try to arbitrate. And some will say, you know what, I'll leave it to God's hands. So that
Yeah.
helplessness sometimes, I mean, there are good things to that. Don't get me wrong. As a Christian, even the Bible says, don't take your brother to court. Make sure you use the elders of the church and blah, blah, blah. I can see the good
Yeah.
side of that. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm curious to know, especially like helplessness, where when someone has done wrong, like for example, rape, you hear things of, let's keep in the family. Don't mention it, let's leave it to God and all that. Are there religious pressures, from because I know India is quite heterogeneous, and Hinduism as well is one of the
Yeah.
more prevalent religion there, right, and culture and way of life. Do you think that also filters in how these issues are dealt with, as far as just let's just love on people, let karma deal with them, as it were, and let's not take it to the legal side and all that? Does that translate to your country, like the way it's applicable in my country, Nigeria?
Yeah, to be honest, I personally have not heard any such cases similar to that. I mostly hear some cases like the fear of stigma, societal judgment. I feel like a lot of the cases that I've heard and personally I've seen documentaries on have often been victim blaming. Like, you were wearing this, why were you there at night in the first place? What were you doing alone in the first place? It's often victim blaming and particular damage to, as I said before, the women's reputation. But many victims also feel like they just don't want to get into the legal system because of the legal system that is already in India. It's often a lengthy, long legal process. It's traumatic to hear that again and again. And although people mostly be like, oh, why do you want to stretch this out so much? Just let it go, be done with it, and move on. Erase this phase of your life. That's why there is that's such a high rate of unreported rape cases in India. It's just because of that. And additionally, there is a lack of trust in this legal system, in Indian justice system. And also, there have been cases of retaliation where if a powerful man is involved in a case like this, there could be retaliation, there could be further threatening and stuff happening. So
so true. And everything you talked about, for listeners, I highly recommend you watch To Kill a Tiger. If you're emotionally fragile, just keep that documentary. It really gives you just a glimpse into these issues, that the reasons and just the sentiments that Anjali just talked about. And the central message of the documentary was about a 13-year-old girl who was raped by her cousins or some family members, about 3 of them. And it was wild for me to hear some of the villagers just saying, let her just be married off to one of them anyway, since she's already been damaged. Why was she there? She probably seduced them. This whole issue has brought our village morale down. This is the first time there's been a rape. And I'm like, are you sure it's the first time there's been a rape, or the first time it became publicly known? And you could just see that the discomfort they felt wasn't even for the victim. It was for the perception of their village, value, as whatever that meant, going down because of this incident, because there were a lot of journalists coming in, social worker. But I give credit to the guy, Kiran's father. That's the
dad who
oh my goodness.
He fought endlessly. He went to court.
Oh my goodness. And from what I heard, not many men are like that. Not many men are like that. And it's because, again, the stigma is so heavy that to be involved with that is almost like signing your own death sentence. You could see that even the ward master and the villagers, they were clearly against the father. Why are you pursuing this? Why are you giving us stress? When they even wanted it, because they wanted it to have a witness. There was no witness because it happened during a party at a wedding party in your family house. Exactly. Yeah. What did you want? The cockroach or the lizard on the wall? Like, who do you want as a witness? And they reported it to the ward master, and he was a little bit hesitant to even come in to give his own, reported speech. So there's so many layers to this that really adds a difficulty. But I think it's a dark side of the communal sense of, living, right? There's a dark side of it. There's so many beautiful parts of not living for yourself, being considerate of others. But then when it's taken to the extreme end, like we see in these cases where victims don't want to come forward, because it's almost like they'll be victim blamed. There's a lot of stress on the family, and it also disrupts the dynamic of the family. And rape itself on the individual is a lot. It's a lot of pressure. Now, for you, a little bit of a personal question for you. Growing up in India, like, what was it like for you? Were there times where safety was an issue for you? And given that you're a family of girls, were there sometimes your parents were concerned, especially about sexual, gender-based violence and all that?
Yeah, definitely. Any family, if you have girls in your family living in a society, there's always this fear. But I feel like just as women, we subconsciously have this sense that if we are alone, if we are walking at night, we have this thing. We're not going to be wearing earphones, or we're going to have our keys in between our hands, ready to be. We are in like fight back mode every single time. But I feel like just growing up in India personally, I have always been told, like, we just knew, like, if it's 8 or 9 p.m., sun's going down, it's time to head back home. We never had night outs or anything on like that. I, growing up in India, never wore shorts outside my house just because you never know what would happen. And it's just subconsciously in your mind, like, you would not wear certain clothing whenever you're going to school or work, or even just to buy like milk and bread from like a corner shop. You would like be modest. You would not engage. You're not going to talk to strangers. I feel like this is given at any point. But even within family, like, you have uncles, you have male relatives in your family, but you're gonna behave in a certain way, which is not like too touchy-feely. You're still gonna be very, how do I say this? Like, you're still gonna be
the mirror, like, you keep your personal boundaries. Modest. Yeah,
and even if you are in a space working with, if you are in a space where there is a male present, you're gonna keep your social boundaries in place, not to try to, I feel like that's just a woman that just subconsciously just do that every single time they're out and about.
Yeah. I mean, and these are tips to live by, whether you live in India or Finland, because, like you said, there's just something about women, maybe because of just how, compared to like men, our physical strength is, not as pronounced. And some women might be stronger than men, but on average, we're not as physically strong. And so there's always that perception of wherever you are, make sure you know your environment, be hyper aware. Like, my husband could take a stroll any time of the day, but I know that, I can't just, I can't be caught,
You gotta have your pepper spray.
Exactly, and a mace, and then blood of Jesus as well, calling down the host of heavens, So I feel like with the New Delhi case that happened in 2012 and this one, there's been reports that a number of victims have been coming forward, right? So for you, what additional preventive measures or public awareness campaigns you believe could further reduce the prevalence of sexual violence in India?
I definitely feel like educational programs that address consent and respectful relationships from like an early age could definitely contribute a ton. They can shift like societal attitudes towards women and prevent violence even before it occurs. Also, I feel like public awareness campaigns, debunking myths about sexual violence and promoting like a culture of respect and accountability. I recently did an internship for the Women's Center at UCO, where I worked on a paper promoting gynecological awareness among South Asian women and just the taboo and stigma. And I just feel just how much educational awareness, strengthening community-based initiatives that can involve like leaders or schools or organizations to provide like a safe space for discussions can help like a ton. Other than that, I feel like, again, the law enforcement and judiciary system in India to handle these cases with sensitivity, I feel like. I feel those will make great changes to whatever's.
Okay, so as a Nigerian, the next question I want to ask you, I'll try and balance it. So as a Nigerian-born American, I know that anytime I hear about Nigeria, especially when it pops up maybe on social media or on the news, and it's not quite positive, I get so much stress. Like, oh my gosh, here we go again, you know. And it's always trying to remind people like not every Nigerian is out there to scam you. We have great people in Nigeria. Yes, what this person did was wrong and it should be punished, according to the law. But don't extrapolate that to my own behavior, right? I'm just a Nigerian, but I'm still a person and I, hold values that are good. So I'm curious to know, like, for you, how do you deal with the way other people use this whole incident that's happened, this sad, incident with doctor that's happened, to talk about India derogatorily, like the tension between, yes, it's a problem, right? But there's also more to my country.
Yeah. So, I feel it's definitely challenging when these discussions take place about India in a derogatory manner, and it focuses primarily on its problems. I just want to let people know that it is crucial to discuss these issues and acknowledge and address these issues such as gender violence and these systematic inequalities. But I also feel it is equally important to recognize that India is very rich and diverse aspects of in culture and society. Every story has its two sides. There are two sides to everything. But I definitely feel like even though there are certain issues deep-rooted, but there is still so much beauty, so much that India has to offer that do not take it off your list. It's a really beautiful country, really beautiful people. There's just few people who do not live up to it, but still, I would definitely say that while India still has some issues like any other country, it's still very a wholesome and a rich culture.
Yeah, so go there, apply your personal safety precautions, visit Kerala.
Like you would in any country.
Like any country, yeah. Now, despite these challenges, right, there's always hope for progress. What gives you hope for the future of women in India? And what role do you see yourself playing in advocating for this positive change?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic for the future of India, especially for future of women in India. With the ongoing efforts, even and especially the media coverage that any issue currently has, there are so much increased efforts to address these issues, increase awareness surrounding women's rights, and I personally would like to contribute by just like I said, I'm working on a paper surrounding the importance of gynecological care for South Asian women, and reinforcing that the belief that progress is possible. Also, I want to erase the stigma and taboo that surrounds women's health and women's role in the society for faster awareness. Other than that, I feel like we should encourage more women to seek what they need more, advocate for themselves, advocate for positive change, and I hope I use me and spread awareness by any platform, any method to educate and raise this awareness.
That was beautifully said, Anjali. Thank you so much. Now, as we wrap up, is there any other message you'd like to share with our listeners, particularly those who might be unaware of the beauty and complexities of life in India, which is similar to most places? Yeah.
No, yeah, but thank you so much for having me. I hope that I lived up to whatever his expectations were.
Are you kidding me? You were perfect.
But again, I just want to preface that these are my personal experiences, and I don't want to speak for anyone. I don't want to be like, this is what India is. It's just there are issues like in any country, but it's a beautiful place. It has a lot of advanced intellectual people. So, but thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and India again is huge. And exactly 1.4 billion, wrap your head around that. And the they've also contributed greatly, to science and technology. And I think abacus, which is like the what you count,
Abacus,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, was discovered in India, and the concept of zero, right? The number of zero was invented in India.
Yeah.
The decimal system, chess,
Yes.
what else? Plastic surgery, the binary number system.
Wow.
Yeah, I think cotton textiles. Yeah, especially they were the first civilizations to cultivate and weave cotton. Even astronomy and trigonometry. And then last but not the least, yeah, Fibonacci concept. Sorry, the Fibonacci sequence. Sorry, I said sequence. Yeah, and was it Matramero or Matramero? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, so India has contributed a lot, and they keep contributing a lot. A lot of in my grad school, a lot of the smart kids in my school were Indians. So we hope that this really sheds light of issues that are going on in the country, but also the beauty as well. And for the family of the doctor listening to this, I'm just praying over them and praying for comfort and support. It's probably so hard to even wrap their head. It's one thing to really deal with the loss of a loved one, but the media attention and the sensationalism behind the stories by very, very horrible people, and that's also another source of pain point. But all in all, we hope that this episode has really helped to better understand the challenges and triumphs of women in India. And for those listening, we hope that this discussion has not only shed light on those issues, but also on the resilience and hope that exists within the country. I also want to thank our listeners for sending in some thoughtful questions, and a special shout out to Jedi Ramalapa, my journalist friend from South Africa, Sound Africa, for recommending the powerful Netflix documentary To Kill a Tiger, which helped to provide a lot of context for this episode, especially some of the questions I came up with, and also highlighting the urgent need for change in how sexual violence is addressed in India. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please share with others who might find it valuable, and stay tuned for more conversations that matter. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, please take care of yourself and take care of one more person. All right, Anjali, thank you so much. Thank you. How do you feel?